The 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly under the theme Better Together comes at a pivotal moment and is an opportunity to renew global commitment to multilateralism, solidarity and shared action for the people and the planet. Let's cross live now to New York for the Sustainable Development Goals moment.
Agbaroji Salome is a Nigerian American poet and youth activist and was the 2023 National Youth Poet Laureate of the United States of America. We are honored to have Salome here today to commence the 2025 SDG Moment, and you now get to welcome Salome.
It's the year 2030. The children are gleeful and free, finding fun in planting trees. They shovel to make way for the seeds, and then the metal strikes something beneath. Reserves of an unknown present, a time capsule, memories of modern day reverence. And on the container it says, "The hurt we hold, let's let the land carry. Bury our burdens, let time determine and adjust us. Let our doubts collect dust in the pursuit of justice." And as they're tucked deep in places that the sun can't reach, thus can never grow. Today, I want to make a time capsule that the children of the 30 will not understand. I hope hate speech reads like an ancient script that folks cannot decipher or decrypt. I hope that they see a picture of our bleached coral reefs and think that it must be a black and white photo. Let's make a time capsule that they couldn't understand. I hope they're perplexed by the sight of a bullet, that they see a gun's trigger and not even know to pull it. I hope they see a child's prosthetic and search for the rest of the doll, that they see protest less of an aesthetic and more like a call. I hope they will come across disease and trust the means to cure it and not drown in the now as we live in the current. I hope that they never understand the process of casing your hope in salt to increase its shelf life, to preserve it for generations. I hope they never understand the pulse of desperation to keep going and to carry on. In fact, let's tape a note to the front of the time capsule that says, "Open me when the people are confused as to how our world's resources are wasted and overused. Open me when the people are stumped as to how our luscious forests can be reduced to stumps. Open me when the people are finished with the tireless fighting and dividing and violence inciting." They will open this time capsule in the year 2030. And their confusion will be a testimony, not to ignorance, but to progress. And they will lower this capsule, which holds nothing of their interest, back into the ground and say, "The hurt that they held, let's let the land carry. Bury their burdens, because our actions today determine and adjust us as our doubts collect dust in the pursuit of justice. And in the cavity of the soil, they'll plant their seeds in the place where the sun cannot reach, but still manages to grow." Thank you.
Thank you, Salome, for such poignant verses that capture both the urgency and hope. We really appreciate your intervention today. Next, it is my honor to welcome the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, to deliver his opening remarks.
Excellencies, honored guests, dear friends. We all know the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals: to build a fairer world where people and planet thrive, a world that leaves no one behind. But we also know that with just 5 years left, we still have a long way to go. Looking around the globe, it is not hard to see why. conflicts rain destruction. Funding for development is drying up, and the climate crisis strikes blow after blow. And yet, even in this turbulent moment, we see signs of progress, hope, and opportunity. A record number of girls are in school, and graduation rates for all students are rising. Child mortality has declined, as has maternal mortality. HIV infections are falling. Electricity now reaches 92% of the global population, with the Asia-Pacific region on track to universal energy access. None of this progress is by chance. It is the result of deliberate decisions. Those and many other examples show how investing in development pays, and how the work of so many in government, civil society, women's organizations, youth movements, and the private sector are making a concrete difference. The question before us is, how do we expand and speed up progress? And the answer lies in the goals themselves, their strengths in their interconnectedness. Education advances gender equality. Climate stability strengthens food security. Fighting famine paves the way for peace. This matters because the SDGs follow the law of increasing returns. The further we get on each goal, the easier it becomes to achieve others. And momentum is building. This year saw strong outcomes at the UN Ocean Conference in Nice, the Financing for Development Conference in Sevilla, and the Food System Summit Stocktake in Addis Ababa. The coming World Summit for Social Development in Qatar and the UN Climate Conference in Brazil are opportunities for more speed and more scale. Dear friends, the SDGs dare us to imagine a better world. The exact path to reach it differs depending on national contexts. Small island developing states, landlocked developing countries, and least developed countries are all facing unique challenges and opportunities. But for all countries, some things remain the same. First, we must reform the global financial architecture. And that means delivering real debt relief, tripling the lending capacity of multilateral development banks, and ensuring developing countries have a greater influence in the institutions that govern their economic fate. Climate action must also take center stage. We must act immediately to keep the 1.5-degree goal within reach and harness the full potential of the renewables revolution. I look forward to all countries putting forward ambitious national climate plans, and for developed countries to honor their pledges on the loss and damage and adaptation. We must also prepare for technological transformation. New digital tools have the potential to supercharge sustainable development, but we need guardrails to ensure safety and inclusion, as well as financing to bridge digital divides. Excellences, dans tout ce que nous entreprenons, nous devons faire une priorité. En 2024, les dépenses militaires mondiales étaient
global military spending was 13 times official development assistance, and that is equivalent to the GDP of the entire African continent. In other words, this is not a question of resources, it's a question of choices, and that is why good governance is essential. The just and transparent institutions described in Goal 16 are vital to the 2030 agenda, and we must make strengthening them a priority. As the General Assembly commences this week, we will hear talk of targets and percentages. We must never forget that every percentage point, every fraction, every decimal point represents lives changed and lives saved. It's time to intensify our efforts to achieve the 2030 agenda. We must regroup, recommit, and refocus. We must keep the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
That event there in New York being addressed by the Secretary General Antonio Guterres, focusing on the SDGs, that's the Sustainable Development Goal. There are 17 in total, and they do include poverty, also quality education, decent work and economic growth, as well as reduced inequality. And it speaks about the fact that, if countries are to reimagine a different future, they need to be making different choices. It isn't just about the resources, he says, but it's about the choices that are being made, and also saying that the world needs to now just prepare itself for this technological transformation, but they must guard against exclusion, because that is, of course, even a huge concern, even in a country like ours, South Africa. Climate action, he also speaks about today, and saying that when it comes to even ending things like poverty, things like inequality, some of the countries need to have serious conversations about the issue of debt. And Sharon Bricepiece, my colleague, they're also tracking that particular one for us, and even taking part in this important conversation. We'll continue then to bring you more on it, even as later tonight, President Cyril Ramaphosa is going to be taking part, especially giving that address there in that landmark two-state solution conference. You're seeing quite a number of different countries that are starting to recognize the state of Palestine.